Folks, welcome back to the woods. In this episode, I'm going to show you a few simple tips that have helped me accelerate my bushcraft skills over the years. So the kind of main traditional technique of doing feather sticks is just splitting open a piece of wood. This is just a piece of hazel. Getting your knife, placing the piece of wood to the side of your body and just curling your knife down and just trying to find the right angle of your bevel to get the feathers, the sticks, to curl. And the thing is whilst this is a really good method because you can be really controlled. When you're first starting this out, it's really difficult to find that bevel because you may not be used to your knife. You might have a bit of a blunt blade. This is much harder with a blade that's blunt. But this is kind of a traditional way, I would say, of doing a feather stick. Each time I make a curl like that, I then turn the wood slightly, find a little ridge, and then curl down again. Turn the wood slightly again, and curl down again. And this is the way I've always done feather sticks for a long time. But then I realised there's actually quite a few other ways that you can do this. It's all very well and all, but it can be quite tricky if you are a beginner. So another way, and a much more controlled way in my opinion, is rather than push the knife down on the wood, is actually just use the wood itself. So being careful not to have your fingers slide down the blade, so have your thumb on the top of the blade. Just put it into a log like that, bury it, and then just hold it. Split this piece in half to make it a bit easier. And this time, rather than using my knife, I'm actually just going to use the stick itself and pull it against the bevel. And this is a much more controlled method. It's much safer because the blade is in front of my hand, so it's well out of the way. And you just do fine movements to find the right depth of the bevel of your knife, and do it slowly to begin with because you want to be able to find what works with your knife. And then you can always get finer as you go. But you barely need to touch the bevel of your knife to get these curls going. So try and keep the wood as flush and flat to the blade as possible, and then barely tilt the blade in, and you get some really nice thin kind of long curls doing it this way. I've shown this in videos before from the above angle and in much finer detail. I'll link to that video in the description below, but it's essentially a bushcraft knife skills video. Now, the bushcraft knife is not necessarily the only tool that you'll have with you in your pack. A lot of you guys, me included, will carry a small hatchet or an axe. This also has a sharp bevel, and it can be used in a similar fashion to make feather sticks. All you need to do is bury it in the log, but make sure that the heel part of it, this part, is sticking out. So here's my log. I've buried that in the ground, in the log, sorry, and I've left a part of the bit exposed just here. In a similar fashion to the knife, you're just pulling this stick against the bevel of your axe. And I find it's almost easier to make a feather stick with an axe than the sharper bevel of a knife, just due to the grind really. So let's give it a go. I'm also holding my axe higher up here, just for a bit of support. Again, it takes a while to find the bevel, but once you do, you can make some really nice curls. I prefer making curls with an axe. Sorry, there's an airplane going over. Just because of that kind of convex grind, but with a nice big bevel on it. Big cheeks. So again, I'll change camera angle in a minute, but I'm just going up and back, up and back. If the axe falls out, doesn't matter, you can just rebury it in the log. But if you bury it deep enough and well enough, it holds up, bites in really well, and you get a solid platform to work from. Look how fine these curls are with just an axe. You know, these are really good fine curls for getting a fire going and exposing that dry inner wood. So you can see the principle of how I'm moving the wood and just rotating it when I want to put some feathers on the other side of the wood where it's getting too bunched up and thick on one side. Just rotating it. The next kind of beginning tip is never underestimate how much you can do with a Y-shaped stick. There's tons of things you can do in the bushcraft world with just a Y-shaped stick. I'll show you a few. Some are simple, some are a little bit more complicated, But the basic principles of what a Y-shaped stick can do, it's really quite impressive. And once you open your eyes to noticing these in the woods, you'll be able to identify a lot more resources for bushcraft projects and things like that. So Y-shaped stick, all I'm going to do, I've sawn it off the main branch here, and all I'm going to do is where this main trunk comes and meets the fork of the Y, I'm just going to saw there like that. So now the trunk of the stick, the main branch, is gone, and I'm just left with this the Y shape there, which is now a V. So about 3 inches from the main stick, I'm going to cut a bit off here like that, and then I'm going to go down probably 12 inches or so and just cut it off there. All of a sudden, that Y-shaped stick now looks like this. It's the stick up like this so that the point is facing upwards. I'm going to turn this to you so you can see, and then just here I'm going to make an X. So I put my knife diagonally there, use another stick to batten it, hit it down gently, just so it bites into the wood a bit. So I've made a diagonal cut, and I'm going to make another diagonal cut and hit that down there. With an X, I've done a line there and a line there. So with the smaller point of the stick facing me, I'm then going to move material diagonally on the X. So I'll zoom in a bit. So there's one cut at that angle. I'm now going to match that angle, come back about an inch, and just slice away some wood. Just like that. A couple of times, and you can see it's fallen away. And now I can see where my stop cut was, which is this. This is called a stop cut, doing that. And then this is a slice cut, slicing. So I'm just removing some of that material away, then coming in here where I made the original X for the stop cut and moving that material. Now I'm going to do the same to the other side. So turn it round, come up and meet that diagonal point that I originally made for that X. And you're just rotating your knife really. You don't have to push hard, just let the blade do the work. This honestly takes, you could do this in 5 minutes, maybe less. But essentially what we're making is something to hang the pots from. So you can see that's the depth of my notch at the moment. If I go much deeper than that, so you can see that's the depth of my notch at the moment. If I go much deeper than that, I'm going to weaken this part of the wood. It's going to be quite weak. So that should be enough. And now from just that Y-shaped stick, I've made myself a pot hanger that can hang over the fire. So my chief fire instructor here, my daughter Eve, say hi Eve.
Hi.
Has been getting the fire going and maintaining the fire pretty well so that we can demonstrate this for you. Imagine this is a spit hanging over the fire. Here's my Y-shaped stick. Okay, I can hook this whichever way over the fire I want. But the most important thing is that notch there can hook, my kettle can now hook onto that notch like that. It's a bit precarious at the moment, that one, but it hooks on that notch. And now I can hang my kettle over the fire. Now obviously this is a bit short, so it would hang like that, and that's how it would work. I tend to try and not waste these pot hangers because what you could do, they're multi-use, is you could tie some cordage to a tree, pull it tight, so put the cord around the notch itself, pull it really, really tight. I've just done an arbor knot here because they don't tend to slip. I can double it over, go round the notch, tie it off at the back, and then with that secure, this can take a lot of weight, this fork. And now even with this big backpack which is loaded with gear, you can just hang it from that notch. My backpack is dry, it's off the ground, it's easy to get things in and out of the pack without having to lean over, bending down on the ground. Nothing gets wet. Really simple, multi-use. That's what you can do with a small Y-shaped stick. But if you get some larger Y-shaped sticks like this one's slightly different in that I'm making sure that the Y is coming out kind of evenly to the main trunk. But they're thicker, they're about the thickness of my wrist really, a little bit thicker. And then if I put some points on the end with an axe, so now 2 Y sticks and some stakes, just hit them into the ground, and you can knock in between the Y here. It's really strong generally, it's really tough if it's not too rotten, but just knock those in. So now with my 2 Y-shaped sticks in the ground and a straight stick, over that I've made a spit for the fire, and then I can use my second Y-shaped stick to hang that from the horizontal beam, build my fire down the bottom, and then hang my kettle, and within probably 15 minutes or so I have a whole cooking setup. So another use for the Y-shaped stick is some slightly higher ones. These are kind of coming up to my chin. 3, they're not really thick, but what you can do is make a very quick tripod. Just to show you in close up, with the first 2 I'm just going to interlock them like that and lean them together. The third one is going to hook in underneath both those 2 to form a tripod that will self-support itself. It will support itself. They don't have to be straight, and then the third one supports both those 2. And then what you want to do is just push down on the middle to check that it's rigid. That's now not going anywhere. I have a tripod. Now all I do is just wrap a piece of cordage around, like so, little arbor knot, keep it simple. I can loop it round so that it's actually going to go down the middle of the tripod like that. So what I do is I loop it on itself like that. Hopefully you can see that. Then I fold that loop up above, pinch and pull so that it's like a loop through a loop. Grab a small stick, wiggle that through, and then pull tight. And now that's not going to move anywhere when I pull on it. From here I can get my kettle and just push the stick right through, push it through there, make sure it's central, and that stick is now holding up my kettle. So there you can see 3 forked sticks or Y-shaped sticks, some cordage that goes down to a kettle, and then to adjust the tripod, the height of the kettle, all I do is just widen the tripod legs. You can make an adjustable marlin spike, but I just widen the tripod or bring the legs closer to raise it over the fire. Again, really simple, just using Y-shaped sticks. So another thing you could do is tie an overhand loop in your cordage, and that stick that you were using earlier on the kind of spit, the pot hanger, you can actually just loop this through the loop like that, and it will swing with the weight of the kettle at the bottom. It won't rock like that, and it will swing really well. There's the notch that I made earlier, and the kettle hangs absolutely fine from the stick. The benefit of this method, using the pot hanger, is that the heat from the fire won't burn your cordage as much, and you don't run the risk of your cordage or your string that you're using snapping, because too much heat from the fire, if you're using the wrong type of string or just paracord or anything in general, eventually it will start to weaken with the heat, and it will create a weak point and snap. Whereas with a stick like this, you're keeping that string a lot higher from the heat of the fire. And of course, another use for a Y-shaped stick, nice and small like this, is a slingshot. Just 2 pieces of elastic on either side of the fork, fold them over on itself, tie them and lash them to it, and then you've got yourself a slingshot. Another tip that really helped me to improve fire lighting in wet conditions, or when the wood is really wet, is splitting open, finding larger sticks, sawing them, splitting them open to get to that dry interior, as opposed to just using twigs. Now, twigs can be great. I use them all the time for fire lighting. It's a really nice way of getting a fire going quickly by using kind of pencil thin thickness and moving up to thumb thickness and then wrist thickness and things like that, and slowly building the fire. The difference with wet weather fire lighting is that the sticks are totally damp on the outside. So you have to get that flame to burn through the layer of the damp layer and evaporate the water and the moisture in the wood before it starts to ignite properly. Whereas if you had one round stick, let's say this thickness of your wrist, and you split it open, you then expose that much drier wood on the interior of the stick that has been protected by the outer bark. And it doesn't take too long to process it down. Once you get 2 or 3 fairly large sticks, a couple of inches in diameter, split them open, get them down to thumb thickness sizes, depending on what you're using to light your fire with. And that already I can feel is much drier than the damp twigs here. Even though both of these have been out in the elements, these are much drier than the sticks here. And I'll show you that now in comparison. I've got here, to make it even, 2 barbecue firelighters exactly the same size. And I'm going to light them at pretty much exactly the same time. I'm going to wait till they get to the same sort of flame. And you'll see, there's one. Right, so they're both lit. They're pretty even now. And I'll just show you the difference between these, okay, which I'll just gently lay on the firelighter now, compared to the twigs. And it's not just that the twigs will burn and ignite generally quicker because they're thinner in density, but if I just move that over there, it's a bit hot. What happens is the twigs the stick that's been split open, the flame burns for much longer and it buys you a lot more time to process your other wood. See, I'm already getting flame coming up higher through these bits of wood than I am through the twigs. Again, the twigs burn quicker and you can build that fire up with that dry wood, and when it's really wet conditions, at the moment they look quite even. But the difference being, this twig pile, although it's starting to burn quick now because it's so thin, the twigs, this will burn out a lot faster and I'll have to keep feeding it a lot quicker. So in damp and wet conditions, when the conditions are against you, splitting open wood and exposing that inner wood can make it burn for much longer than this side. And what I'll do is I'll just fast forward this clip now without any cuts, and you'll see what I mean, that this, I'm not going to touch them, this will burn out a lot quicker. So you get ready for some fast and forward motion as I sit here. So interestingly, not quite 5 minutes down the line, that was quite hard for me to sit still, but this fire with the sticks burnt bright and hot very early on and had a much bigger flame than the split stick fire. But now look, without having touched them, the twigs that were damp have pretty much started to burn out. The open stick fire is burning nice and hot now for a lot longer. I'm not having to touch anything. I haven't loaded any more sticks on. If I was doing this under conditions where it's continuously raining, I would have to keep feeding this fire to your left, to my right, with sticks and twigs all the time to build it up, which is fine, it's totally doable. I'm just saying that I certainly helped to advance my fire lighting skills once I started lighting fires by splitting open a lot of these sticks. Now it does take a bit more time, obviously, but you know, in terms of efficiency of flame and what burns and having low maintenance fires, splitting sticks open does make a big difference. What I'll do is I'll come around that side of the camera and we'll put some fast motion in again. And I guarantee you this one on your left is going to burn out and this one will still keep burning. Okay, the flames are dying down. It's still there. That's a good 5 minutes later than the previous fire, which is totally burnt out. And that's without me moving these pieces of wood back in and blowing it up to a flame again. So split sticks fires definitely last a lot longer. Okay, next tip, and it's related to fire lighting again, that has helped me over the years when trying to keep it simple, looking for tinder material to make a tinder bundle or a bird's nest type thing to light a fire. When you open your eyes to natural materials that are dead, dry, and can be made fluffy or fluffed up into a bird's nest, you will suddenly realise there is actually quite a wide variety of natural materials that you can use for lighting fire. For example, here behind me, there's just lots of green bracken, and whilst green, like this bracken is useless for lighting a fire, it's just going to smoke. But when it's dead and died back, like this one here, you've only got to snap off a few of these dry branches, like so. Just one bit of bracken there, and then bunch it up into a ball, make a little bird's nest, and I could put an ember in there, or I could do this There you go. Very flash tindery, but it can get you a fire going. And it's not just bracken or dead material like that. It could be grass, the inner bark of cedar tree, which can be peeled off, buffed up in your hands and made into a tinder bundle, and that can take a spark as well. We've also got the honeysuckle vine, the bark of the honeysuckle vine. Again, you can peel that off, fluff it up into your fingers, rub it together in your hands, keep it dry in your pocket even, and then throw some sparks on it from a ferro rod, and that can light it too. You'd be amazed at the type of materials that you can use to get fires lit. Something else that I found really useful to me over the years is the value of green, so with the leaves on, bendy sticks, twigs, small saplings. The bushcraft uses you can get from small, thin, bendy sticks is just incredible. You've got things like a spring pole snare, which I've shown in a previous episode, you know, using the bendiness of a sapling that's growing, making multiple components from the trap from the same sapling, and yes, setting up a snare with a trigger system that can then be launched as the mammal or the bird takes the bait. And it's incredible that just a small green stick can do something like that. The other thing you can do is things like I've done recently where I've made a fish trap and you weave, it could be hazel or willow or any small thin sapling in and out of some vertical uprights, and you can create a fish trap. In relation to that, you can also weave baskets. I've made some baskets from the clematis vine, just pulling the vine down from the tree and making a small spider-like structure, and then weaving smaller vines in and out of the spokes of the basket itself. It's a bit rudimentary, it's a bit crude, but it works and it's practical. And I've just felt that over the years, I've gained so much bushcraft experience from working with thin green mid saplings, vines, you know, anything that's flexible and bendy and thin. Is pretty incredible what you can actually make in the kind of bushcraft world. So there's just a few tips that I've found had really accelerated my bushcraft skills quite quickly over the past few years. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. I hope maybe you gained something from it. If you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe. I realise, guys, that over the past couple of years, I kind of dropped videos as and when I could. It used to be that I did Monday night uploads or Tuesday afternoon uploads for 8 or 9 years. And then I kind of stopped that and started uploading kind of sporadically. So you guys never really knew when I was uploading an episode. And so I'm going to try and stick to Monday afternoon, kind of evening upload time, about 6 p.m. UK time, 5 p.m. UK time. And if not a Monday, then a Tuesday, but essentially the beginning of the week. So if you're a subscriber of the channel and you're wondering when my next videos will be, keep an eye out on the channel for Mondays about 5 p.m. And if not, I'll update you on social media. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys in the next episode.